Hello everyone, this is Mr. D once again. My goal for you today is to show you the different elements cartoonists use in expressing their opinions in the cartoons they create. You will need to know this because over the course of this year I will be showing you cartoons from the past as well as cartoons from the present. What you're looking at right now is a cartoon drawn by Harish Nath, and it appeared in Upfront magazine. This is an editorial cartoon. What I also like to point out to you that there are 5 elements or techniques cartoonists use in creating editorial cartoons. The first one is symbolism. The second one is exaggeration. Below that is labeling. Below that is analogy. And the last one is irony. It is important to point out that cartoonists might use all 5 of them in creating an editorial cartoon, or they might use 3 out of the 5. One element that a cartoonist might use in creating editorial cartoons is symbolism. It involves the use of symbols or objects. Cartoonists may use them to represent larger concepts or ideas. If we look at our cartoon below, we can see that the cartoonist has chosen to use 2 runners as symbols. There's one runner here, and there is also one smaller runner down here. These are the 2 symbols or objects that the cartoonist has used in creating an editorial cartoon on economic and political reform in China. Following symbolism, we have the next element that an editorial cartoonist may use, which is exaggeration. It is the overdoing of objects or people to make a point. And what I'd like to stress out to you here is the word overdoing of objects or people. If we look at the cartoon below, we can see that the cartoonist has exaggerated the legs of the first runner as well as the shoes, the running shoes. If we look at the second runner down here, we can see that he is much smaller, and we can also see that there is a look of despair on his face. So these are the 2 things that the cartoonist has used here in this editorial cartoon, demonstrating the technique of exaggeration. The third technique that an editorial cartoonist might use in making editorial cartoons is known as labeling. Labeling is used by cartoonists to make objects or people exactly clear in what they represent. If we look at our cartoon below here, we could see that it's clear that the cartoonist has labeled economic reform in China on the runner's shorts, and down here in a sign that the small runner is holding up, he has put political reform as a label. These are the 2 labels that the cartoonist has used in this editorial cartoon. Another element or technique an editorial cartoonist might use is analogy. It is comparing 2 unlike things that share similar characteristics. If we look at the cartoon below, we can see that the slow pace of political reform in China is compared to the slow trot of the runner down here. This is the analogy that the cartoonist is making in this editorial cartoon. The final technique an editorial cartoonist might use is irony. It looks at the difference between the way things should or are expected to be. If we look at the cartoon below, it represents the tremendous amount of irony in China when it comes to things economically and politically. The Chinese government has been communist since 1949, but a sense of capitalism has been embraced by the Chinese people in recent years, as well as economic reforms by the government. In fact, companies from the West, such as Starbucks, has opened in China, and by 2020 it is predicted that the Chinese economy will surpass the economy in the United States of America. Politically in China is a different story, and this is the irony when considering the economic reforms that the Chinese government has made as compared to things politically. The Chinese government does not allow its citizens to access Google, Facebook, or Twitter. This effectively blocks them from expressing any type of political reviews or calls for reform. In fact, the Chinese government employs over 100,000 internet monitors, known collectively as the Great Firewall. So there is an irony that is expressed in this cartoon where we see that a tremendous amount of economic reform has been made in China, and this is shown by the cartoonist by the size of this runner as well as the tone of the runner's legs, as compared to the small runner down here, which represents political reform in China, where we could see that he is not showing any type of strength in his legs and almost gasping for breath. So there is an irony here in China when it comes to economic reform as compared to political reform. Finally, I'd like to review with you the elements or techniques a cartoonist might use in making an editorial cartoon. Please remember that a cartoonist might use all 5 elements or techniques, and they are symbolism, exaggeration, labeling, analogy, and irony. However, a cartoonist might use 3 of them, 4 of them, or just 2 of them in expressing his or her opinion about a certain topic. Here we can see that the cartoonist has decided to draw a cartoon about economic reform and political reform in China. It is also my hope here in viewing this video that you will learn how to analyze editorial cartoons as we go through this school year. As I said in the beginning, you will be exposed to cartoons that were drawn many years ago, as well as cartoons that are drawn today to represent current events. Please use this information in looking at these types of cartoons, and please see me if you have any questions on analyzing editorial cartoons. Thank you.